As Diane shared with you, my name is Amanda DeVries, and I am the Executive Director of Eagle's Nest, which is a local charity here in Waterdown. Before I start talking about what we do and who we are, let's just start with a scripture reading. I'm going to be reading this morning from Mark 12, starting at verse 28. One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, "Of all the commandments, which is the most important?" "The most important one," answered Jesus, "is this: Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind, and with all your strength. The second is this: love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these." Love your neighbor as yourself. What does that mean, and what does that look like? Universal love is the heart of Jesus' teaching. In his sermons and his parables, he challenges us to have a true passion for the welfare of others. There are lots of references in the Bible about loving our neighbors. In Hebrews, it talks about loving one another and not to forget to show hospitality to strangers. In Matthew, it talks about caring and serving for those in need, those who are hungry, sick, or hurting. In Luke, there's the story of the Good Samaritan, and it reminds us to show compassion to those who are suffering. When I start to reflect on the foundation of Eagle's Nest, who we are, what our identity is, I am reminded that the organization was really built on this commandment. We do what we do because Jesus loves us. And we want to show his love and his grace to others. And our staff and our volunteers, we get the opportunity, I actually consider it a real privilege. We get this privilege to be able to love on our neighbors, to love people in our community, and to help them in real practical ways. So what is it that we do? Up on the screen, there's going to be our mission statement. In Eagle's Nest, we've actually been caring for our community for over 20 years, as Diane already mentioned this morning. Many of you might actually remember our first project, which was Drummond House. It was a transitional home for women and children in our community. And although the doors to that home are now closed and our programs have evolved over the years, the heart of what we do is still the same, and the why we do what we do. Our mission statement, it talks about equipping people for change, for healthier futures. And so what is this? What are we doing? We're helping people care for their mental health. We're helping them learn new tools for healthy relationships. And we're helping understand themselves better. At our center, we actually provide a variety of programs to adults, youth, and children. Our most popular is therapy that we provide with a team of psychotherapists and social workers that provide individual counseling and family counseling. We also have coaches that work with people to set goals and to help them keep accountable. And then we have a variety of therapeutic support programs that we do. With the help of our community, with generous donors, we're actually able to provide all of these programs for free, so fully subsidized or at low cost. We want to be able to remove that financial barrier to ensure that anyone in our community can have these supports that they need. We want to make them accessible to everyone. When we're caring for others, something that is really forefront to us is our values. And we actually have 4 values. You'll see them up on the screen: love, integrity, inclusion, and compassion. Our staff and volunteers are really intentional to show these values, both in our words and actions to each other, as well as how we care for people who walk through our doors. If you think back to those verses that I talked about at the beginning, these values really reflect how Jesus wants us to love on our neighbors. You know, many of the people that we work with, they've never experienced these values being shown to them from people they know, let alone from strangers, people they don't know or they've met for the first time. I've seen how embracing people with these values can have such a significant impact, even before we've begun to offer them official support. There's all different reasons that people reach out for help for us. And often there's this real sense of hopelessness when people actually make that call or send that email. Sometimes this can be a result of a broken marriage. It can be because their child or maybe themselves are struggling with anxiety or depression, or maybe they faced a traumatic experience. We know when they make that first phone call or send that email, it takes a lot of courage. It's very vulnerable when we have to share our story with others and to share with people we don't even know. And sometimes we know that it's even hard for them to imagine that their story could look different, that life could actually change. The other week, we received a phone call from a woman, and she explained that she was really feeling hopeless, and she honestly felt that there was nothing out there that could help her. There was no support. She thought, okay, my life is not going to change. She was on the internet, and she was Googling and trying to figure out, okay, is there something out there? And then she saw a review from a client of ours that had wrote, "After I received the services from Eagle's Nest, I was filled with hope." By just reading that review, she explained that she already had hope for just the possibility that there could be something that could change her life. We often see these little glimmers of hope right at the beginning when we're just doing our intakes. We had a call from a single mom, and she explained to us that her and her kids had unfortunately experienced a very traumatic situation, and she knew that they needed therapy, but due to her financial situation, she had to make a choice. Was she going to put food on the table, or was she going to put them all in therapy? She had to choose to put food on the table. When she found out that Eagle's Nest would be able to provide her family therapy for free at no cost, she was in tears. Because a stranger, a generous donor who didn't even know her, was providing funding for her family to be able to have therapy. Loving on our neighbors can have all different forms. I know I've already mentioned that we work with adults, youth, and children, but because I can't be here all day talking to you, I'm just going to narrow in on kids and on young people. I really want to emphasize why the supports for this age group are so needed. Unfortunately, in Canada, the statistics around mental health and young people are not encouraging. You might have heard the statistic that 1 in 5 are going to struggle with a mental health concern, and that can look different for everybody, what that is. When you think about youth, and in Canada statistically, that is 15 to 24, they're actually the age group that have the most mental health needs, but they're also the age group with the most unmet needs, so they're not getting the help that they need. So why is this? Well, let's think about youth. They're going through all different developmental changes, physically, emotionally. There's lots happening. I see some youth here today, and you know that your world is changing. So there are going to be lots of different things that impact your mental health. So if we know that this is happening, why aren't they getting the supports that they need? Well, there's lots of different reasons. Sometimes due to all the changes that are happening, the symptoms are even missed, or people don't even recognize that maybe there is supports out there for them to be in a healthier situation. But then there's a whole bunch of other barriers. Cost is one of them. I already mentioned cost. That affects everybody. And so, especially with youth, maybe their parents would be able to afford therapy. Maybe their parents have benefits. Unfortunately, though, sometimes youth are in a position that they actually don't want to tell mom or dad that they're struggling. Or maybe part of the challenge is with the family. And so how do you do that? And how do they reach out for help? Transportation can also be a barrier for youth, just getting there. Availability is a huge one for youth, and this is just huge in our medical system. Without going into too much details, our youth, those young people, they're not kids anymore, but they're not adults. And so sometimes the services that are offered to them, they're missed, or they're put in one of those other categories that maybe aren't the best for them. And so sometimes there's just not the right services available for that age group. And then there's stigma. I will be honest with you, I thought stigma was decreasing. When I went to high school, we didn't talk about mental health. It wasn't part of our vocabulary. When I went to university, it really wasn't either. My major is in psychology. And it wasn't a common vocabulary that we used. Now, and even since the pandemic, think about all the times you hear about mental health. It's in the news. We hear it on social media. Kids have it in their curriculum at school. There's so much more awareness. Yet the stigma is still there that people are not reaching out for the help. One of the things that we do at our center is we talk about our feelings a lot. And so whether this is in therapy or some of our support groups that we do, we try to get people to talk about their feelings. I know that at any age, talking about our feelings is not easy. And it's for all different reasons. I would love to say by the time you get to be an adult, talking about your feelings is easy, we have it mastered, and we're great at it. But we don't. Life's messy. And sometimes we actually don't want to share how we're feeling because we're afraid maybe what somebody else will think. Maybe sometimes we can't even put how we're feeling into words. And this happens often. You just don't even know how to express it. Or sometimes you don't want to share how you're feeling because you know it's going to be too painful and it's going to be too re-traumatizing. So knowing that talking about our feelings is so important and that connection to our mental health, one of the things that we do at the center is we start talking about them at a really young age. And we have a program that's called Emoticon. It starts when kids are around 6, and they get to come in and doing a whole bunch of games and fun activities. They get to learn to identify emotions and feelings in themselves as well as other people. You know, when you're young, you actually think that maybe you're happy, sad, or angry. You have a very limited vocabulary around your feelings. But you know, you can be embarrassed, you can be scared, you can be excited. There's so many different feelings we can feel. So learning that vocabulary and learning what our body does. When you're angry, maybe sometimes you can feel your fists starting to clench, or when you're nervous, what happens? So we teach the kids to recognize this. But then we also teach them what to do. So how are you going to manage when you're angry? And so giving them a toolbox of coping skills. And these are things that they can carry on with them as they grow older, as they become youth, as they become adults as well. We know that talking about our feelings takes practice. I've already said it's not easy. I was once described that when we talk about our feelings, we have to imagine that our feelings are like a piece of beautiful glass artwork. And so whoever you're going to trust with your feelings, whoever you're going to trust with this beautiful piece of glass artwork, you have to know that they're going to treat it with care. And that's something that's really important. And if I think back to our values, when I think about how people are going to trust us with their stories and trust us to share things, with their feelings, showing our values is definitely helpful. Sometimes when people decide to not share their emotions and feelings, people can start to feel isolated, or they can start to feel alone. Not everybody, but sometimes this means that they could then face depression, anxiety. For some people, substance abuse, or even suicide. Last year, I had a 17-year-old girl who came to me, and she said, "Amanda, I really want to figure out what I can do to help make mental health supports more accessible to youth." She was very passionate. When I began to talk to her, I realized her passion was the result of a loss of a peer due to suicide. She explained to me that this loss had impacted her greatly. And after the loss of her friend, she was able to recognize, in her own words, she said, the mental health crisis that was around her in her own peer group. She started to share with me the more we talked about how there's friends of hers that don't reach out because they actually are afraid that somebody's going to think that they're faking it and what they're going through is not real. Others of her friends don't want to reach out because they actually feel it's not significant enough of what they're going through, and somebody else needs that help, not them. This goes back to that whole idea of stigma, why youth are not getting the help that they need to get. Eagle's Nest knows that if we can help youth now, there's this potential that they will be healthier as adults. We're all going to face challenges. We all do. Doesn't matter what age we are, there's different challenges that come our way. And if we have the tools already, we can be more healthier and successful adults as well. But we recognize, not just by talking to this 17-year-old, Eagle's Nest recognize there is such a need out there for helping young people. And so we're committed to continue looking at our programs. We're trying to figure out what else can we do so these statistics are not so big, so this group is not getting reached. And so I'm actually excited. We just recently received funding to do some research in our own community to really look at what we're doing and to question, can we do things better or can we do things different to help strengthen our programs? But when I think about what needs to be done to care for youth in our community, I recognize that Eagle's Nest, we can't do this alone. We need other people. And so I'm looking at all of you at church, and I believe you can be part of the solution and part of the support. There's already programs and activities that you are offering and providing in our community. You're providing people with a sense of community, a sense of self-worth. As a church, you also meet spiritual needs, which is so huge and impacts our mental health, the importance of who we are. And then there's simple things that we all can do. A smile, just listening to somebody can go a long way, being intentional to people, being present, and to listen. I remember I was once working with a 6-year-old girl. She unfortunately had gone through a very traumatic situation, and I was doing a variety of expressive art activities with her as a way to get her to start talking about her feelings. And every week she would come, it would get a little bit harder because the story would come out a little bit more. And her grandma expressed to me that she would not miss a week. She was so excited to come. And I thought, man, why? This is hard. This is not easy. She's 6. And she has to talk about all of this. And so I thought, I'm going to ask her why she likes coming. And I was for sure she was going to say it was because of the art we were doing or the activities we did. And she looked at me so quickly, I can still see her eyes, and she just said, it's because you listen, and I know that you care. And that's what she needed. And that's what we all need. So when I think about what we can sometimes offer youth, or even adults, is being present, listening, showing that we care. You don't have to be an expert in mental health to walk alongside somebody. You can just be a friend. You can just be present to listen. I'm always reminding our team, even us, we have a group of professionals that studied this. We are able to help people. But sometimes we're not the experts in a certain situation. We all have to know kind of what our boundaries, our barriers are. And so sometimes we'll get people that reach out to us, and maybe we don't have the experts in that area. And so we have to know when we can actually reach out for help for somebody else. So it's the same for you when you're walking along side a friend and listening to somebody. When somebody needs more help than you can offer, you can direct them in the right direction. Whether that be Eagle's Nest or another support in our community, there is lots. But being that listening person, being present and providing community goes a long way. We live in a very messy, hurting world. And I really believe to change our statistics, there are things that we all need to do to help. We can all love on our neighbors, whether it's a young person, a child, or an adult. Just to end today, I could talk up here all day about the things we do and share stories. And I definitely will be here for a little bit after the service. I'd love to connect. I would love to share more stories, or if you have questions more about what we do, or even how somebody can reach out to receive our services. But I do want to leave with you 4 things that you can be praying for us for. The first one is for courage. Pray for courage for people to make that first phone call, to write that email. You feel so vulnerable when you're asking somebody for help. And especially too, sometimes you've already asked for help and somebody has said, no, I can't help you. And so it takes even more courage to reach out again. The second one is discernment for our team. We hear a lot of stories, and sometimes it's knowing how we can help or where we can help. We can't do everything, and so even knowing when we have to partner with other people in the community to help us. Funding is the third one, and this is always a big one for any ministry and organization, I realize. In the last 2 years, our budget has actually increased by 40%. And this was a result of the pandemic when the demand for what we provide has increased in our community. But it's also the result of inflation when we had increases in rent and utility costs. So a combination of different things have resulted in this increased budget. So just to be able to sustain what we're doing, we need to be able to bring in more money before we even look at growth. And the last one is volunteers. We always need more people. More hands make it easier. And we have volunteers that help us administratively, help us with our programs, and then we have a huge team of volunteers that help us at our thrift store, which some of you may have visited in Rescued and Restored. It's up in Frilton, and it's actually a 6,000 square foot warehouse where volunteers will work up there, sorting, pricing, helping with cash, and all those funds then go right back into our programs. So those are 4 ways that you can be praying for our team. And we definitely appreciate your prayers and support. I know that many of you already pray for us regularly. There are some people here that volunteer for us. I know that there's a team of you that have walked for our coldest night of the year, which is our annual fundraiser walk in Waterdown that we do. And then we have people that support us financially. These are all ways that you are helping to love on your neighbors in your community. So thank you, and thank you for this opportunity just to give you a little bit of a glimpse of what's happening.